Welcome to this pre-event interview from Automotive Logistics, ahead of Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Mexico. I'm joined today by Ian Slaven, Vice President, Global Sales Vertical Lead Automotive at Kuehne+Nagel. Welcome, Ian. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Good afternoon.
Now, Kuehne+Nagel is obviously a global partner across the Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain event series. Why do you feel these events are so important to attend? And what is Kuehne+Nagel looking to get out of the upcoming event in Mexico?
So these events have always been important for us and our competitors and the tier one suppliers and the OEMs to attend. And now I'd say it's more important than ever. So initially it was important just to come together, understand what people were doing in the specific regions that automotive logistics covers, whether it be the global event in Detroit or the event in Mexico City, Singapore, Bonn, so on and so forth, to kind of level set, get a baseline for, again, what are the tier one organizations doing? How are they moving forward? What changes are happening to their physical footprints, their supply chains, sourcing strategies, sustainability initiatives, so forth, right? How's the industry changing, right? If we think back a few years ago, what is happening in blockchain? How does that impact the supply chain? What is happening with the Internet of Things, so on and so forth. So it's a way for all of us to come together. And as I say, right, baseline benchmark where all of us are, start to pull from one another and develop these best practices to go forward and help our supply chains, again, whether it be a global freight forwarder helping automotive companies develop and create better ways to move forward, whether that is for cost efficiency, operational efficiency, sustainability. But now in this kind of post-COVID world where we see more kind of regular disruptions and we understand that they will be more regular, it's even more important that we commingle together, start to have these conversations, start to build out larger and more robust networking frameworks that allow all of us to move in unison together for just a better developed automotive space in totality.
Mm-hmm. And Ian, you spoke at the event in Detroit about combating unpredictability. That's something that's extremely relevant to Mexico's automotive supply chains and a key theme of the Mexico event. Why do you think resilience is such an important topic at the moment, particularly in this region?
Well, if we think about the Americas, and I don't want to, I think, Mexico deserves a lot of praise, and I don't want to diminish, any of the South American countries' contribution or, other countries in Latin America. But for the Americas, Mexico is the factory of the region, right? And having kind of conversation around being able to have resiliency in Mexico is really important because, again, the vast majority of what's being produced for the automotive sector, it's not everything, but the vast majority is coming out of Mexico. So when we see disruption in Mexico, the reverberation that's felt throughout the industry is really significant. To go back to what I've just said, is we understand now that at least for the foreseeable future, we may see anywhere from 3 to 8 disruptions on an annual basis. It's important that we spend a lot of time focusing on where we get, the most amount of product and where we spend the most amount of money to ensure that we allow these supply chains to run, right? It's kind of like the Pareto principle in a way, where you're getting 80% of the product or somewhere thereabout, right? And I'm not quoting specific numbers, but where you get a good portion of it, you have to make sure that we're taking care of that region, scenario planning, and making sure that we're contemplating what could happen so that if and when it does, we're poised to react in a way that will help protect the industry in the immediate term and then the midterm as well.
And lastly, Ian, you'll be speaking at the Mexico event in November as part of a panel looking at propelling Mexico's supply chain forward. Briefly, what do you think are the critical priorities needed to advance supply chain and logistics operations in Mexico?
The very big question. So, while I am a stakeholder in the space, and you know, debatably an expert in a number of ways, as I mentioned, that question is very big, and I hesitate to take a really strong stance on it because there's a lot that needs to be considered. Obviously, the relationship as it relates to Mexico and the United States from a trade perspective, right? We need to look at that very carefully and ask ourselves, do we understand the importance of Mexico and what it provides to the population of Mexico, but also what it provides to the population of the United States and Canada? Do we understand, the role that each of us play in this relationship? And how do we think about preserving it as we go forward? Because this thing that we've created in NAFTA or MCA is really hard to unwind. As I think a lot of people who weren't kind of informed in the space came to understand that some of these parts move across borders multiple times in their life cycle. And it's really important that we nail that down. When I say nail it down, what I mean is the rules of engagement and give ourselves some time horizon to be able to really work within this relationship so that there's not a constant level of uncertainty or volatility present, because volatility and uncertainty doesn't lend itself well to being able to plan in the mid and long term, which is what these organizations need to be able to return shareholder value, to return a solid product that the consumer base wants to purchase. And then, if we look at it from a people aspect, provide some level of stability and peace of mind to the employees in the organizations, no matter what country you're speaking about, whether it be Canada, the US, or Mexico, so that they understand that there's a structure and an agreement based across countries that allow for them to remain employed and be part of that value chain, but also that there will be a framework that supports them so that they can work in somewhat of an efficient way, long term, where they understand what they're delivering, why they're delivering it, whether that be, again, intellectual work, manufacturing work, whatever it may be. So that's one. And then, one of the other things that I think we as an industry need to tackle is, some of the growing security concerns in the country of Mexico. And, complex problems require complex solutions. And this is something that's always been, semi-present, right? But it's becoming more of a concern. And to be frank, it's not only a concern in the country of Mexico, it's becoming more of a concern in the United States as well. So we need to seriously think about how we're integrating further security into the supply chain and how we're able to ensure that there's more, again, I'll use the term peace of mind relative to the transport of goods and the way that we design the supply chains and assemble the footprints to ensure, the greatest amount of security as possible, right, within reason.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great speaking with you today, Ian, and we look forward to seeing you in Mexico City.
Great. Looking forward to it.